Welcome back to another episode of Cellar Dwellers Film Reviews. I remember way back in the day in high school Spanish class, sitting talking to my friends about the recent announcement that there was going to be a Godzilla vs. King Kong movie. And while some people were saying, oh, that's going to be so cool, oh, I can't wait to see it, I was the one saying, how in the hell is King Kong going to fight Godzilla? Flash forward a couple of years to 2021, Godzilla vs. Kong came out, and I was absolutely blown away by how much I loved the movie, so much so that I had to go back and watch Kong Skull Island, Godzilla, and Godzilla King of the Monsters. Recently, the fifth movie in this franchise, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, has hit theaters. So, based on how much I love the first Godzilla vs. King Kong, you better believe that I was in that theater opening weekend. Right off the bat, I'm gonna say I really enjoyed this movie. I think it was super entertaining, but I don't think it's the strongest Godzilla Kong movie. And yeah, I'm including the two Godzilla movies and Kong Skull Island. The basic plot here is that after their fight in 2021, Godzilla and King Kong are on separate levels of existence on planet Earth. King Kong is staying in Hollow Earth, and Godzilla is staying on, I guess, regular Earth. As long as one doesn't cross over into the other's territory, there really won't be a problem between them. In his adventures in Hollow Earth, King Kong begins to discover that there might be other great apes down there just like him. And in this search for a quote-unquote family, he finds Scar King, the great ape that had a millennia-long beef with Godzilla way back when. Scar King also has under control an ice titan named Shimo, who he controls with, I think, a scale off of Shimo, but then again, it's never really explained. In layman's terms, Scar King is blackmailing Shimo into helping him. So now you have an evil great ape and an evil dragon. So what do you use to fight them? A good great ape and a good dragon. And that's where the plot goes from there. There's some other things about the human story, and it's really not that compelling, but we'll touch on that in a moment. I think the biggest takeaway from The New Empire is that it's really not a Godzilla and Kong movie like Versus was. It's more the King Kong sequel with a little bit of Godzilla splashed in there. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but 90% of the story was focused on King Kong and Scar King, and the other 10% was, well, here's Godzilla, we're just going to use him for the muscle of the team. Not only that, it was really just so he could fight Shimo and the battlefield would be even. At that point though, I know they're out to make a Godzilla and King Kong movie. You could have taken Godzilla out of the movie entirely and just called it King Kong 2, and I don't think it would have been that much different. But that qualm aside, the choreography of the fighting was super cool. As you've probably seen in the trailer or some TV spots, at one point King Kong is riding on top of Godzilla and uses him as a base to jump off of. That's awesome. There's some zero gravity fights between the four monsters. That's awesome. King Kong goes into a great ape fighting pit inside of what looks like an underground volcano. That's awesome. Godzilla takes a nap inside the Colosseum. That's awesome. And when King Kong comes up to regular Earth to talk to Godzilla, as the two are fighting, a resurrected Mothra has to be the mom of the situation and pull the two boys apart and make sure that they play nice. As a straight up monster movie, or rather a movie about monsters, Godzilla x Kong hits the mark. It feels weird to say, but some of the monsters even get a certain level of characterization even without dialogue. Usually it's the great apes, but there's a little bit of Godzilla in there too on how he defeats the other titans and how he prepares himself to go down to Hollow Earth and fight Shimo. The animation was really cool, mostly because there weren't a lot of times where the monsters were on screen with something real like humans. So as long as all of the animation was up to par with the other animation on screen at the time, you couldn't really make an argument that it didn't look great. I'm still a little confused as to the significance of including the Iwi people in Hollow Earth. I understand it from a plot point, but from a script writing point, I'm not really sure what the significance is, other than to just, not in a bad way, complicate the plot. Also, there is an ungodly amount of plot dump towards the end of the second act, beginning of third act, where the humans from regular Earth who are now in Hollow Earth are trying to figure out the Iwi writings on the wall in the temple. It is legitimately a 10 to 15 minute scene of here's what you need to know for the entire movie. I don't really know how else they could have handled this except adding another 20 to 30 minutes onto the movie, But that actually is a great segue into my point that I mentioned earlier, the human story of a monster movie. The reason any horror movie or monster movie is successful or compelling is because there's a great connection between the other and the norm. In this case, the other is the monsters: Godzilla, Kong, Scar King, Shimo, even if you go back a little bit further to Ghidorah and Rodan. The norm is the human element, the human story, the normality that we as an audience are used to seeing. Take a step back a couple months to Godzilla -1. Phenomenal movie in my opinion, but part of the reason why it's so exciting and such a great movie is because on top of Godzilla leveling cities in Japan, you also have a super heartfelt, well-written, well-thought-out human element to the story. That's what gets you to watch. Godzilla doesn't have any lines of dialogue. He doesn't have any characterization besides, I'm gonna go destroy this country. The thing that drives the plot and the thing that drives the audience to continue watching is the human story. Part of the reason why Halloween is so successful is because Laurie Strode is the kind of character that you can root for, the kind that you can get behind, the kind that you don't want to succumb to the evil of the other Michael Myers. In Godzilla vs. King Kong, the human story wasn't a 10 out of 10, I'll be the first to admit it. However, there was enough of it there to make you care about certain people in the movie. In The New Empire, the human story really takes a back seat, and I think that was intentional on the script writing part. It doesn't take away from the entertainment value of the movie, because seeing King Kong and Godzilla throw down with other titans is entertainment enough. But I think if you really want to make a monster movie that sticks with the people, you need to have those Laurie Strodes in your movie. You need to write it out to flesh out the characters in a certain way that makes them stick with audiences when they leave the theater. Overall, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire is a super entertaining movie and one that I really think I'll be going back to. Will I go back to it before Godzilla vs. Kong? Probably not. That's my favorite in the franchise. And in case you're wondering, here's my ranking of the franchise. This last point isn't really a Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire thing, it's more of like a franchise element in total. Even aside from the fact that in my mind I just can't picture King Kong going up against Godzilla. If you watch the other Godzilla movies like Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters, and you watch how this giant kaiju dragon, whatever he is, absolutely rips through Rodan and Ghidorah and the Mutos, and then you think about, can King Kong do that? I mean, narratively in these last two movies, King Kong and Godzilla are equals, but if you put Ghidorah up against King Kong, what do you think's gonna happen? One of his heads is gonna eat King Kong and the other two are gonna laugh about it. It's the sort of thing that you really need to suspend disbelief for, and I know that sounds strange saying it in a movie about giant monsters tearing through the human world, but that's just kind of how it is. Anyway, that's gonna do it. Yeah, I forgot something important about this movie. As an antagonist, Scar King was pretty underwhelming. When he fought Kong in Hollow Earth, he had his chance to show how much of a menacing threat he could be, only for Shimo to be the one to actually defeat Kong. And for someone who's been trying for ages to get back to regular Earth, Scar King didn't get to spend much time there. In Versus, Mechagodzilla felt like a threat. Godzilla was getting absolutely leveled in that fight before Kong came in to help. At no point did I think that Kong could not take on Scar King alone. All of this to be culminated in a short and sort of underwhelming final fight. But I did appreciate the fact that Shimo turned against Scar King at a first opportunity. For Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, it's a super entertaining popcorn flick that almost anyone can find enjoyment out of. So with that, do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and do yourself a favor and go see Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire in theaters.